And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking the Red Bull BIB T-Tray update. More news after this. So welcome back, and we're recording this just before sprint quali. Here it is, just after practice, where Ferrari did finish 1-2, but that's probably going to be old hat by the time you listen to this. This isn't maybe as old hat. This is the FIA, these two wonderful people here, and one of the Red Bull engineers, showing them how the BIB works when they need to go into the cockpit. It looks a lot more complicated than some people made out. Now here's a video
number one
of it
with on the right hand side.
That's Ollie Shack, he said, demonstrating how to do it, and that looks way more complicated than it needs to be.
Exactly how they do it. I never thought that they were actually going to be.
We're taking Ted's word for that. I'm not too sure what he's showing them, but I imagine they are showing it. And understandably, Twitter's absolutely blown up on the whole thing. I mean, Red Bull, we strongly deny cheating accusations. Also, Red Bull changes car after discussions with FIA. And therein lies the big issue. Therein lies the big issue. I am happy to think that Red Bull would not cheat. I would rather that happen. I'd rather be in a sport where that doesn't happen. Now, the issue is it's not quite the boy that cried wolf, but it's kind of like there's been so much shade thrown at Red Bull, you start to wonder maybe, possibly, could they? Which is not a healthy thing at all. Now, in terms of that, we've got, obviously, the WhatsApp at the beginning of the year. WhatsApp gate, fair enough. That hopefully is finished with. We've got the braking issue, and now why they're a lot slower than McLaren. Hopefully that's now. But the cost cap, obviously. Hopefully, and incidentally, the only team to breach the cost, the actual monetary value of the cost cap. And then we have this, which the BIB, which they can raise. It's not the whole floor. It's just the front of the floor, kind of like the underneath tray, probably around there. The T-Tray is sometimes called, and they've been called out. I mean, Hilton crashed, and this is crash.net. McLaren Zach Brown spoke to Sky Sports F1. Hopefully they put this whole video on YouTube because it is quite interesting, about his thoughts on the Red Bull's front BIB device. And Brown said transparency is critically important in today's day and age. He said what doesn't quite stack up is the comment that you can't modify it. Well then why do the FIA feel the need to put a seal on it? And also Zach Brown said 9 other teams don't have this device, this complicated device, and there's a reason, suggesting that there's a reason why. And here's the full story here. McLaren CEO Zach Brown says aspects of Red Bull's explanation of its BIB height doesn't stack up. Now, following on from Red Bull's admission and explanation that it's going to have a thorough investigation via the FIA. And yes, it exists, although it's inaccessible, Red Bull said, once the car is fully assembled and ready to run. The issue is, what does that mean? Is fully assembled, ready to run with a driver in, so they can't get to it? Who knows? It's vague, isn't it? In the numerous correspondence we've had with the FIA, this part came up, and we have agreed a plan going forward. What is that plan? Well, it consists of additional seals on the access port. So, okay, they're not cheating, fair enough. But then the question begs, why does Red Bull need additional seals on the access port when they didn't need it last race? This is the thing. And that's located beneath the driver's heels and inaccessible without removal of several components, including the nose pedals and access panels, which once again goes to show what they're kind of doing there. Well, the FAA seemingly putting the matter to bed, Zach Brown revealed that he still has question marks. He said, well, I think they probably had no choice because it's been published what are called open source components, where all teams can see what each other are doing. They kind of like have their plans, so to speak. You have to submit the drawing to the FIA, and all teams have access if it's an open source component. So every team, which is what we do, we look at it and you can see it, he said. So I think there's no denying that they have the ability to access their front BIB from inside the car. That's undisputed. That's interesting. And bearing in mind, Zach Brown, when he looks at designs, he's not an engineer to the same level of someone that's designed his McLaren car. So they probably potentially would have told him as much. So, I think they had no choice but to say, yes, we can, he said. From what we've seen, we know we can't. We don't have access. It's not designed that way. And from what we see in the eight other teams don't. That's fairly significant. So I think they had no choice. Now, asked whether he believed they may have used the device under park family rules, he said, why would you design it to be inside the car when the other 9 teams design it to be outside the car? Fair point. Ingenuity is part of Formula 1, and then there's black and white rules. He said you cannot touch your race car other than things like driver comfort. You can change, obviously, I think the tyre pressures maybe, but definitely the front wing. He said they, as in Red Bull, chose their words very carefully, saying when the car is fully assembled, but you're not allowed to have the car fully... You're not allowed to not have the car fully assembled in Parc Fermé. Also, what doesn't quite stack up is the comment that you can modify it. Well, then, why did the FIA, as we just said, feel the need to put a seal on it if it's not accessible post or during Parc Fermé? Why not put a seal on it? The McLaren CEO said he's very happy to see the FIA keeping on top of the situation. That's quite interesting. Why? It's all unnecessary, isn't it? I mean, it's convoluted. It's an extra thing that you don't need to do. Will it add more weight to the car? Maybe, because it involves maybe more components with the being able to lift it. And herein lies the other potential kicker. Is this interview with Mark Priestley, which I thought was interesting. Now we know the Red Bull is a newly designed car. Yes. Could this part have been in post for Adrian Newey? Maybe. Probably not, though, when you look at how long parts take. And it would have been there on the open source. It would have been interesting to see how much. And besides that, when you design a part, it can take weeks and months to actually come on the car. But anyway, Priestley says Newey has zero compromise when it comes to performance. Why am I saying that? Well, having spent this is from Mark Priestley saying, having spent 5 seasons working under Newey's watch, Priestley took a trip back in time. He said he worked with Adrian for all the 2000s until he left McLaren from 2000 to 2005. Amazing guy. And he said his attention to detail is second to none. I'll give you a story. I remember working on a car that Adrian had designed at McLaren years ago. We had this huge barred water deflector on the side of the car, an enormous bit of kit, and the suspension ran through it. In my mind, he said the obvious thing to do was to put a little slot in the deflector, because they were getting damaged, knocked on curbs, and we'd have to keep changing them. What you really want to do is slot it over the suspension and put a new one on, basically make it easier to do. But you couldn't do that because Adrian would not have a slot in this deflector, so we had to remove the whole front suspension, which took forever. Mark pictured, and he said, Adrian, I said, come on, have a look at this. And he asked, why are you designing things? How much, as a rough percentage of your capacities, do you put into practice, being practical, thinking about people like me working on this car, as opposed to outright performance? Adrian Newey said 0. So that thing is there. If Adrian Newey designed it, for a reason. Just saying. Having said that, playing devil's advocate, innocent of proving guilty. No one has seen Red Bull do this. And if this is the only way, there may well be some doubters. If that is the only way you can change the BIB, then it's going to be pretty obvious, isn't it, that Red Bull are doing it. Unless there's something inside the cockpit that you can do similar. Who knows? Maybe we'll have an update post-sprint qualifying. It's certainly getting interesting, isn't it? So, if you like what you see, give us a subscribe. That will be great. By the time you watch this, you'd probably know who's got the sprint pole. Is it a McLaren? Is it a Ferrari? Is it a Red Bull? Mercedes not looking particularly great, but you never know. I may well be eating my words. I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.